Hey everyone, and welcome back to MetaCast. I'm John, and I'm here with Maya for another deep dive into gaming.
Glad to be back, John.
Today we're breaking down the Game Awards 2024 nominees.
Sounds good.
It's the biggest night in gaming, with all the awards and the hype for upcoming releases. But for this deep dive, we're going to laser focus on the Game of the Year category.
Excellent choice. The Game of the Year contenders always spark a ton of debate, and this year is no exception. It's a really diverse lineup this year. I think it really shows how much gaming is changing.
Okay, so let's unpack these nominees. First up is Astrobot, this charming little platformer that's creating some serious buzz.
Yeah, what I think is really fascinating about Astrobot is that it's more than just a fun game. It's like a love letter to PlayStation and to the history of gaming,
I see what you mean.
That nostalgic element really thinks to be connecting with players. And I think that could give it a real edge in the running.
For sure. Then we have Metaphor, Ray Fantazio.
Oh, yeah.
This RPG was a surprise hit from the creators of Persona. This one seemingly came out of nowhere.
Right, and it's so interesting because it wasn't like a huge marketing push that got it to the top. It was all word of mouth and players getting excited about the unique storytelling. That kind of organic hype is hard to beat.
Absolutely. Of course, we have some big names in the mix, like Final Fantasy VII, Rebirth, guaranteed to be nominated. And it's definitely a serious contender.
Oh, for sure. Final Fantasy VII, Rebirth had a lot to live up to, and I think it really delivered. Critics and fans are both loving it, praising the visuals and the story. It really wouldn't be a surprise at all to see it take home the award.
Totally. Another game that's getting a lot of attention, especially in China, is Black Myth Wukong. It's interesting because while it got good reviews, they weren't amazing, like stellar. But its nomination really speaks volumes about its cultural impact.
Definitely. This really highlights how global gaming is today. Black Myth Wukong's success, even without perfect reviews, shows that games can break through cultural barriers and find huge audiences around the world.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And then there's Balatro. This card game came out of nowhere, a real hit, and just captivated players. I think it being included in the nominees really shows how diverse gaming is today.
Absolutely. Balatro proves that innovative gameplay and unique mechanics can still win over players, even in a market that's so crowded. It really makes you think about what a Game of the Year contender should be.
It challenges the norms.
Yeah.
Last but not least, we have Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree. Now, the inclusion of this DLC sparked a lot of debate about whether expansions should even be eligible for the award.
It's a very interesting question. I mean, on one hand, DLC can really expand on the original game, offer a totally new and big experience. But then on the other hand, some people say it's just an extension of what's already there and shouldn't be competing with games that stand on their own. The fact that Shadow of the Erd Tree was even nominated, though, I think, suggests that at least some voters see the impact of DLC and how valuable it can be.
It's a tough one for sure. So we've got these 6 incredible games, each bringing something unique to the table. But there were also some big snubs this year, games that a lot of people expected to see up for Game of the Year.
You're right. The competition was fierce, and some really high-profile games just didn't make the cut. This makes you wonder, why were these games left out, and what does it tell us about how the nominees are chosen? Let's start with maybe the biggest surprise, Helldivers 2.
Yeah, Helldivers 2 was a massive multiplayer hit for Sony. So it not being on the Game of the Year list was a shock for a lot of people.
It really was, and it's especially interesting because it showed that Sony could do live service games successfully, something they hadn't really done before. So the question is, why wasn't it nominated? Maybe voters were looking for something a bit more innovative, or something with a stronger story. Things that Helldivers 2, being mostly an action game, might not have had.
That's a good point. Another surprise omission was Silent Hill 2. Even though the remake got nominated in other categories, you'd think being such a beloved classic would have gotten a Game of the Year nomination.
Right. The fact that Silent Hill 2 isn't up for Game of the Year might mean that voters are changing what they care about. I mean, remakes can be amazing, but maybe there's a growing feeling that new stories and experiences are more important. It really makes you wonder, are we getting to a point where nostalgia just isn't enough anymore to win the big award,
It's an interesting thought. I guess we'll have to see how it all plays out.
Definitely. And then there's Dragon Age. The Veil Guard, a good game, don't get me wrong, but I'm not sure it hit the same heights as other BioWare games,
Yeah, good point. Seems like voters are looking for games that really push the boundaries and redefine what we expect from games. Speaking of high expectations, even The Legend of Zelda, Echoes of Wisdom, missed out on a nomination, which is pretty rare for a Zelda game.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's especially interesting because Echoes of Wisdom tried something different from the usual Zelda formula. And it seems like even with that new approach, it just didn't capture the same magic as the other games in the series. Makes you think, are voters looking for something familiar, even in new ideas?
Maybe. We can't forget Tekken 8. It got a great score, a solid fighting game, but it didn't get that Game of the Year nod. Is this maybe a sign of genre bias?
Hmm. It definitely raises the question of how different genres are represented in the Game of the Year category. Tekken 8 got great reviews, but fighting games often appeal to a specific audience, you know? It's not that they're not as good, but it just shows how hard it is to reach a really wide audience when the gameplay itself might not be for everyone.
I get it. So we've gone over the contenders and the snubs. Now the big question is, who's going to win? What does this year's group of nominees say about where gaming is at right now, and what kind of games are really connecting with players and critics?
I think it's so interesting to see how the idea of what makes a game of the year is changing. It's not just about amazing graphics or even great reviews anymore. Things like cultural impact, how innovative the story is, and the overall experience players have are becoming more and more important.
For sure. And this year's nominees really show that shift. We've got games celebrating gaming history like Astrobot, games pushing boundaries in storytelling like Metaphor, Refantatio, and games redefining what a genre can be like Balatro.
Exactly. The fact that we're even having this conversation with so many different kinds of games up for the award says a lot about how dynamic the gaming industry is right now. It's such a fun time to be a gamer. There's so much creativity and innovation happening.
I completely agree. But for you listening, what does this all mean? What do these nominations and snubs tell you about the games you like to play? Are you drawn to games with groundbreaking stories, innovative gameplay, or maybe a touch of nostalgia?
We really want to hear what you think. Which game deserves to be Game of the Year? Tell us in the comments or on social media. We're always up for a good gaming debate.
Definitely. But before we wrap up this deep dive, let's take a step back for a moment and look at the bigger picture. The trends these nominations highlight. We've talked about indie and devil games challenging the big AAA titles, the growing importance of a game's cultural impact, and the debate over whether DLC should be in the awards. What other changes are you seeing in the world of gaming?
One thing that really stands out to me is how much more emphasis there is on inclusivity and representation in games. We're seeing more developers from different backgrounds, creating games that reflect a wider range of experiences and perspectives. And this isn't just making the stories better, it's also expanding who plays games, making gaming more accessible and welcoming for everyone.
That's so important. And that connects to another big trend, the rise of gaming communities. Online platforms and social media have helped create a shared experience for gamers, letting them connect, talk about games, and even work together on the games they love. It's created this amazing feedback loop where developers are listening more to players, and communities are actually shaping how games evolve.
It really shows how powerful gaming is as a social and cultural force. It's not just a solitary hobby anymore, something you do alone in your room. It's a vibrant global community that crosses borders and cultures.
Absolutely. And as technology keeps changing, we can expect these trends to keep growing. Cloud gaming, VR, and AR are opening up new possibilities for how we make, experience, and connect through games.
It's such an exciting time to be a part of this world. It's constantly changing and evolving. So as we close out our deep dive into the Game Awards nominees, we want to leave you with this thought. What does the future of gaming hold? What kinds of experiences will capture players' imaginations, challenge the way things are done, and redefine what Game of the Year even means?
We want you to think about those questions as you explore the huge and ever-growing world of video games. And remember, the most important award isn't the one given out on stage. It's the one you give to the games that speak to you, the ones that take you to new worlds, and leave a lasting mark on your heart and mind. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Game Awards. Until next time, keep on gaming.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about how these trends will shape the Game Awards, in the future. Will we see more indie games taking the top spot? Will DLC become like a regular nominee? Or will people still prefer standalone games?
Right. And what about the role of these gaming communities?
Hmm.
Will they have even more influence, not just shaping the games themselves, but also which games get recognized? It's really exciting to see how things will unfold.
It is. It really is. The Game Awards are kind of like a snapshot of where gaming is at a specific moment. But the conversations about the games, they keep going even after the awards are over. It's in those discussions and debates. and those shared experiences that we really understand the impact of these games
Yeah.
and what they mean to us, you know?
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Game Awards 2024 nominees, we want to leave you with this. What makes a game truly deserve that Game of the Year title? Is it about pushing the limits of technology? Or telling groundbreaking stories? Or maybe it's just about creating an experience that truly connects with players?
That's a good question. I think ultimately it's subjective. There's no one formula for success in gaming, and that's what makes it so great. The beauty is in the variety of experiences, how the medium keeps changing, and the passionate community that drives it all.
Couldn't agree more. And that's what we try to celebrate here on MetaCast. We delve into the trends, the controversies, and the games that shape the world of gaming. And we invite you to join the conversation, to explore this amazing world of interactive entertainment.
Exactly. So until next time, keep playing, keep exploring, and keep those controllers warm.
And with that, we'll say goodbye. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time on MetaCast at MetaCast.